evening. We're going to get started. My name is Mark Shanahan, and I will be serving as chair of the Columbus Energy Review Committee. Tonight is our first meeting. We had an opportunity to speak a little bit with the mayor and Council President Ginther just before we came in to tonight's session. I want to just, as a brief introduction, we're going to hear a lot more detail about this, but what they have asked us to do as a citizen review committee is to explore the ins and outs, the pluses and minuses of something called aggregation. And we'll hear in more detail what aggregation is as the evening goes on. But very simplistically, it is a question of whether or not you can bundle together most of the citizens of Columbus and as a group purchase electricity or gas, and by so doing have a benefit for those citizens. A number of places around Ohio have done it. The mayor and Council President Ginther have asked us to take a look at that question and to come back to them with recommendations about whether or not it's something Columbus should do. And as you'll hear a little bit later, there's then a very formal process that would have to occur for it to actually happen. But our job is to build that basis of information to give them a recommendation. And the mayor was very clear with us that this is not something that's been decided ahead of time, that he wants to hear the positives and the negatives. He wants to know what works and what doesn't work, and he doesn't want any surprises. And President Ginther reiterated that. So tonight we're going to begin that process. Let me introduce other members of the committee who are with us tonight. And I'm going to start over on my left and your right with Aparna Dayal, who's Director of Energy Services and Sustainability at The Ohio State University. And she's also chair of the Mayor's Green Team. Regina Clements, who is the Director of Emergency Assistance with Impact Community Action Agency. Jim Sweeney, who is the Executive Director of the Franklinton Development Authority. And over here at this table, we have Cindy Farson, who is the Director of the Central Ohio Area Agency on Aging. We have three other members who could not join us tonight. Pastor Jerome Laws of New Hope Baptist Church, and George Walker of the Linden Area Commission, and hopefully joining us by phone before we get through the evening, Cheryl Roberto, who is the Associate Vice President of the Environmental Defense Fund and is a former Columbus Public Utilities Director and former member of the Public Utilities Commission of Ohio. So our role is to provide guidance to the mayor, to the city council on government aggregation, both gas and electric. It can be in either or both. We're going to hold several public meetings to learn about this, each one with a particular topic area. And we want to know about the opportunities and the challenges, the expectations and the experiences from nearby communities who have moved forward with aggregation, and figure out whether it works for us. It's important to note that all of our meetings will be televised on CTV3, the Columbus Television Channel. All materials on each meeting will be available on the city website at columbus.gov/Columbus Energy Review, columbus.gov/Columbus Energy Review. So everything that we receive and get to study will be available to anyone who wants to take a look at it. The meetings will be broadcast live, and then CTV will also publish a schedule for rebroadcasting. So there will be many opportunities for people to see what it is we're discussing. Tonight we're not going to take public testimony, but there are question cards available at your seats, or let us know if you need one. We will get responses to all of the questions and post answers to those questions online, as well as make the answers available at our next meeting. So tonight's purpose is to get a basic Aggregation 101 course for the committee and for the community. And we're joined tonight by representatives of the Ohio Public Utilities Commission, the Ohio Consumers Council, and the City of Columbus's Division of Power. And so they are going to come up and do presentations. We will be able to ask them questions from the panel as they go through. We're going to start with the Ohio Public Utilities Commission and Erin McClellan. Ray Feller from the Ohio Consumers Council will follow, and then Greg Davies and Kurt Hansen from the City of Columbus Department of Public Health. Again, thank you very much for joining us this evening as we begin this important process in the city, and we'll begin with the first presentation from Erin McClellan.
Hello, I'm Erin McClellan, and I'm a Public Information Officer for the Public Utilities Commission of Ohio. And as many of you probably know, the PUCO is a state agency that regulates the large investor-owned utilities like AEP and Columbia Gas. And we also do a lot of community education, and I in particular go out and talk to community groups across Ohio about energy choice and government aggregation. And our goal is to simply educate people and give them the resources and tools that they need to make their own decisions. It's not for us to tell people whether they should aggregate or not, or whether they should choose suppliers, but we give them the free resources and tools that they can hopefully make their own decision. So I'm going to be giving you an overview of several things tonight, and I thank you for inviting me here. So the first thing we're going to talk about are goals for the evening. We're going to go over what energy choice is, so a little bit of history and background on that, how long it's been in Ohio, and what the levels of participation are now. We're also going to talk about governmental aggregation, and you'll learn about other communities that have chosen to do that, as well as the different forms of aggregation. There are two basic forms, so we'll talk about both of those. And then our third goal for tonight is we'll talk about the PUCO's free resources. Namely, we have a brand new website called www.energychoice.ohio.gov, and that's a central resource where you can find all the energy offers side by side and compare them apples to apples so that you know what you're choosing. So we find that is also a good resource for people as well as aggregation information. So you should check that out. Okay. Energy choice briefly is the ability that you have to choose your own energy supplier, electricity or natural gas. And just so you know, it's basically for the customers of the large investor-owned utilities like AEP, Columbia Gas, DP&L, Vectren, not the municipal power companies or the rural electric co-ops. Those customers do not choose. So we're talking about the IOUs. And it's very similar to shopping for things that you're familiar with, cell phone plans, health insurance plans, where you have a choice in your provider. So that's the basic concept of community choice. Now, a little bit of the history there. Back in the late 1990s, the General Assembly restructured the energy market, and they decided to make one part of the business competitive, and that is the generation and supply that you see at the top there. So the power that's coming out of the power plant and the gas that's coming through the pipelines, in other words, the product, that's the part that you can shop for. And so they left alone the transmission and distribution, which you see up there. So those are the transmission wires that are crossing the states, and then the poles that are bringing the power to your home or to the pipelines bringing it to your home as well. So they left regulated pricing on that. And what that means simply is that you now have the option to shop for 50% of your bill, approximately. So that's the generation and supply portion. The fixed costs are going to stay the same for the distribution, for the poles and the wires. So you don't have the option to shop around for that. And that does give a lot of stability to the market. Companies didn't have to come in and build a whole new set of poles and wires. You still use your local utility. So if you have a power outage, even if you switch, providers, or even if you aggregate, you're still going to call AEP Columbia Gas, your local utility. So that's good reassurance for everyone. There's two types of energy choice, really. There's at the individual level, so you can choose for your own family or for your own business simply by looking at the options out there and seeing if you can find a lower price. Or another popular option is the government aggregation. And that's when the local government buys the power or gas on behalf of all of its citizens at a bulk rate. So we'll look at both of those concepts. And in order to make your decision, we've come up with the apples to apples charts, which are found on that website that I mentioned, the energychoice.ohio.gov. And basically, when you go to those charts, you will find all the energy offers for AEP in one place and all the offers for Columbia Gas. So you can compare what you're paying with what the other companies are offering. And that's a very helpful tool whether you're shopping on your own or if you're in an aggregation. You want to know what are the others, what else is going on in the marketplace, and how do I compare with that. This is a sample page from the apples to apples chart, and that is AEP. So on the day that I took the screenshot of that, AEP had, in the AEP territory, 44 providers were offering plans. So we have them all listed, they're updated daily, and you go across and you check out all the various categories. So you'll see at the top the price in kilowatt hours. You'll also see if there's an early termination fee, it'll list that. It'll list any of the special product offers that somebody has an incentive that day, like they're offering a t-shirt or a discount card for a restaurant. It will list that. So our goal was to have one place that you could look. And it's been very popular. We're seeing a lot of people accessing these charts. Now, that's the individual shopping. As far as the government aggregation goes, the basic concept there is the local government gathers the citizens together and buys on their behalf. So they're buying 50% of generation and supply that I talked about. And the goals of the aggregation generally are a lot of times lower price, so the community is looking to get a lower rate than what they're currently paying. But sometimes other things are important as well to the aggregator, to the local government, and that could be renewable energy, for instance. So some communities really want to get power that's green power, green pricing. So they'll go into the aggregation saying, we want to talk to suppliers that have a plan that offers renewable. There's other things that might be important to one community. Maybe they want a fixed price. They just want that assurance that it's going to stay the same for the next 3 years. So it really is an individual decision, but cost is probably the most popular thing that they're shopping for, low cost. Customer response to energy choice. So far, about 1.7 million people have switched electric suppliers and 1.7 million for natural gas. I might have said it's 2.4 million for electric and 1.7 for natural gas. So that is about 52% of people in Ohio have made a change. And most of that has been through government aggregation. So the people that have switched largely have been through government aggregations. As far as government aggregations in Ohio, there are about 400 communities that have electric aggregations and over 300 have an aggregation for natural gas. And most of them are in the northeast and northwest of Ohio, and the reason is the prices were higher up there, and so those communities were quickest to aggregate and get out there and try and form some kind of agreement to get their citizens. So we can see on the the Energy Choice website, we have this aggregation map. So you'll see up here on the map, we have the northeast and northwest of Ohio. It's highly aggregated, it's colored in there. And then it's sweeping down. There are some cities like Cincinnati toward the south that have it, Marietta, far south, and some new communities are coming on board with aggregation, so they're not quite on the map yet, but the city of Athens will be launching theirs this summer. So the main point there is it did build a lot of steam in the north and northeast, but now we're seeing more activity throughout throughout the state. You can do your own research on the aggregations as far as if you want to just check out what other communities are doing. Those maps that I just showed you are interactive, and you can just get your mouse and hover over a certain area. So say the city of Cincinnati, click on it, and all the documents that are associated with that case will come up, and you can read them over. So you can see what letter they sent out to their citizens, offering what rate they're getting, what the source of their power is, how long the agreement is. So that gives you a little opportunity on your own to do some due diligence if you want to look into that. But largely speaking, the cities that we mentioned that I think you said were comparing, going to bring in, might be bringing in the city of Cincinnati, I think I heard. And other communities are more than willing usually to share their information, so I encourage you to take advantage of that. There's two kinds of aggregations. There's opt-in and opt-out. And opt-in is when a person has to proactively sign a contract to be part of the aggregation. And an opt-out is the person is automatically included in the aggregation unless they send a card back that has them opting out of the agreement. So generally speaking, with an opt-out aggregation, you're going to have more people belonging to the aggregation because it's easier for the city when more people have to opt out. A lot of people don't take the time or trouble to send the card back, so you have more members in your aggregation. But opt-in is still popular as well. So an opt-in aggregation, you have several processes that you have to fulfill. You must pass, the local government passes a resolution in support of the aggregation, and then they come up with a plan, so they come up with the rate that they want to offer and the terms of the agreement, and they have to hold 2 public hearings on that. And after the public hearings are held, they have to get certified by the PUCO. So the PUCO does certify anybody that wants to be an aggregator and sell electricity or natural gas. Then you can start signing people up for your plan. Now with the opt-out aggregation, there's another step there, and that is a vote by the public. So it has to go on the ballot, and the community decides whether they want to have this aggregation or not. If it does pass, and they do decide that they want to be part of an aggregation, then the same process kicks in where the plan has to be formed by the local leaders, the supplier rate, all details that the consumer would need to make a decision have to be announced. So again, what rate you're paying, what the length of the contract is, whether there's a termination fee. And then you have an opt-out letter that goes out. So the opt-out letter is sent to almost everyone. There are 2 exceptions, and we'll get to that. And it's basically saying you are automatically in our aggregation, and we're offering you this rate of, and unless you do not want to participate, you have to do nothing if you are happy with it. If you want to get out, you need to send the card back within 21 days. So people have 21 days to respond to that. And after that, they are enrolled. So as far as eligibility, I said that a couple groups, there's a couple exceptions there. So anybody that's in the PIP program, which is percentage of income payment plan for low-income people, they are not eligible for the aggregation. They are aggregated separately, so they're not part of the local government one. And then 2, if you've already signed up for a customer choice program and you're already enrolled with another supplier, you won't get the letter. It won't be given, the list won't be given to suppliers. So hopefully you won't get the opt-out letter. If by chance you did get it by accident, go ahead and send the opt-out letter back. Because sometimes people who have enrolled real recently didn't have the time to get their name off the list. We do have, I know this is a lot of material to cover, so we do have a call center, and I've got the number up here, that you can call at any time with your questions on customer choice and aggregation, and they will be happy to respond. As well as tonight, I'm happy to take your questions, and whatever I can't answer, I can always go back to the PCO and our experts there and return with information for you. So that is the general overview, and I just wanted to see if anybody had any further questions. Yes?
Do Do you have data on the savings from these government run
Yeah, that's a good question. The PUCO does not gather statistics and data on that, but individual governments that have an aggregation, they keep track of the savings, and you often will see them announcing when they're sending out their letters to re-sign people up. We've saved X amount of money over X number of years, but at the PUCO, we don't track that. Yes, down here.
About the applications, do you know how many follow the opt-in and opt-out? What's the percentage?
I don't know that. I can check into it for you. I don't have that answer. And I will get back to you on that one. Anybody else? Yes?
You mentioned that people who have already made a choice and contract with another supplier are not included. Can they be included when their contract expires?
Yes, they can. So if their contract expires and they want to join the government aggregation, they are eligible to do that.
And I guess one other question, is there any PUC or legal restriction on the length of the term the aggregation agreement can be for, or is that strictly an economic decision?
That's strictly the community and then the supplier that they're negotiating with. We don't have rules about that. Chuck's flashing something at me. Chuck is our expert who doesn't like to come out of the PUCO, but I made him come out today.
Sure, on the gas side, there's a statutory. On the electric side, it's a 3-year limit to the length of the aggregation program, but your actual contract with a supplier can be whatever you want it to be. So you can have a 5-year agreement with a supplier, for example, but if you send an opt-out to a gas customer, you have to send another one in 2 years.
Good point. Thank you, Chuck.
Would they be eligible at some point in time? Would it be just for good customers, or they're just totally back on?
Yeah, they're just not part of the aggregation. They're just excluded. If they left PIP, then they would have the opportunity to join the aggregation if they wanted to.
One more question.
Yes, sure.
I have a question. You said it needs to go to a public vote in our case. Is that out on the general ballot for all citizens of Columbus to vote on, or is that limited in any way?
It can go on the ballot whenever you decide that you're ready to bring forth a vote. So it goes on a general election or a primary election. You can put it on the ballot. Was that the question?
No, I guess the question was, as I understand it, is not everybody in Columbus is eligible to participate, they also need to be able to vote. So even people who aren't eligible to participate will vote on
It's my understanding they can vote even if they're not eligible. Is that correct, Chuck? Yes. So you do have some community education to do when you're out there selling the program, if you would decide to do that, to just explain to people, this is for the customers of AEP or Columbia Gas. Yes?
About how long is the certification process at PUC?
It usually takes people several months, and if they take, it's up to the community for how long they want to spend. So those that are kind of dragging their feet, it can go on for a year, but if you're really on top of things and you want to get it done, it's several months.
And what are the sorts of things you're looking at to provide the certification?
I think I gave a handout to Christy that she put in your packet that might go into detail on that, because there's quite a few things that they look for. It's a pretty detailed process, and we have a checklist, so that should be in your packet. Oh, that question, I didn't repeat it, sorry. Did you hear it? The checklist, they wanted to know what way I could explain all the things that it entails in an aggregation to get certified, and I said it's very lengthy, but we have a handout on it, and it's in the packet, and I can provide that to anyone else. Yes?
Is there a process if a program
application program is suspended, is there a process to go and reinstate the program?
If a program application is suspended, can it be
Is there a process to
reinstated?
reinstate?
I'm not really sure about that. I don't know that any have been suspended. Chuck?
What do you mean suspended how?
They were in aggregation, they decided they did not want to be in the program anymore. The government made that decision.
Once you've gotten your certification from the PUCO to form your governmental aggregation, as long as you renew that certification every 2 years, you don't have to be serving customers. You can maintain the certificate. So in time, if you choose to, if you get a good offer from the supplier and you want to start up again, you can do that. It does not expire as long as you renew your certificate every 2 years. And that's just a matter of essentially filing similar paperwork to what you do initially.
Yes,
Let
back there?
me just remind folks, if the audience has questions, we'd like them to put them on the cards, and we'll get them answers. But for you folks making presentations, we prefer the questions just coming from committee.
From the committee members, okay, thank you for clarifying. Any more from the committee? Okay, well, thank you very much for your time, I appreciate it.
Okay, next is Ray Feller from Ohio Consumers Council.
Good evening. My name is Ray Bowler. I'm with the Office of the Ohio Consumers Council. And for those that aren't that familiar with our office, we are the state agency that is the consumer advocate for the residential customers of the utility companies that are regulated by the PUCO. So they are the regulator, we are the consumer advocate. We are the legal representative for residential customers of investor-owned utilities in the state of Ohio. And talking to representatives of the city, I was asked to kind of just give the consumer perspective on what our office and just, again, what consumers might hope to gain by having the city aggregate gas and or electric utility service. So just in talking to colleagues and just kind of, even just from my experience as an outreach specialist, around the state, communities that have aggregated, what is the benefit? And maybe to some extent, what are some of the concerns and experiences of citizens, right or wrong, just maybe some anecdotal information that the committee might be interested in hearing. And I'll try to kind of point out if it is anecdotal in nature so that you can take that into account, but just to take that into your thinking. So I just again appreciate the opportunity to share that information and insight with you. And I think Erin kind of touched on it a little bit in her opening remarks. What is the number one concern, I think, is, and I think the committee would agree that the first thing that you're looking for is in beginning this exercise is, can you find a good price in going about this? Is there an opportunity for savings? I think that's kind of the long and short of it is that's what you're doing, is looking for an opportunity to save money for consumers. So that's number one. Ensuring that the city, through their efforts, secures the best price possible, at a minimum, that you're not going to find yourself in a position that the customers may end up paying more. So not only saving money, but through your negotiations, that you're not actually putting folks in a position that they may pay more. And I think as your process continues, you're going to have an opportunity to talk to consumers and representatives of other cities have gone through that, and that has been the case in some aggregation initiatives, that the customers through circumstances, timing, just the utility environment, they have ended up paying more as a result of aggregation. So that's the concern. It's a great initiative, one that the Consumers Council endorses. It's Ohio law, it's policy. It's a great opportunity, but sometimes it can backfire. What do they say? No good deed goes unpunished. But that is the concern, that it could actually, in some cases, result in consumers actually being harmed, and that's the biggest concern, that no harm be done. So what is the best way to do that? I don't know if it's the best way, but one that we think is one that the committee might want to consider is to try to negotiate for this is more strategy than anything else, but if it's possible to secure a percentage off price when negotiating with suppliers and marketers. And part of the best way to do that is, in doing your research, to look at the price that the utility company, Columbia or AEP, has, and not, of course, a snapshot. Right now, Columbia Gas's rate is up a little bit. That's coming off of a very cold winter. Back in the summer, it was considerably lower. So, obviously, these are things that the committee, I'm sure, has taken into account. But, find out what is the average price over the last 12 months, maybe even 18 to 24 months, if that data is available, and figure out what would be kind of an average price over maybe if you're thinking about an aggregation over 2 years, it would be fair to think, what is Columbia's rate average over the last 2 years, and try to take into that kind of benchmark, that kind of baseline into account, see if you can negotiate a percentage off rate for your aggregation. That way, you may not even be able to guarantee that is the lowest rate that you could secure, but it would be something that your constituents, that your citizens could be assured that they were going to be paying less than if they had opted out. That they know that if rates fall, they're going to be paying less. If rates rise, they're still going to be paying less than if they were with the utility company. So that is, again, a strategy, something that would address that concern, that no harm would be done. But again, what if a competitive rate is just something that would be, something that you could not negotiate? The committee could certainly entertain fixed rate offers, offers that compare favorably with the utilities rate average over the last year or two, and again, having looking at the environment, the utility environment on the gas side, we certainly have the forecast, the outlook is for certainly a stable supply. If rates are based on supply and demand, I don't have my crystal ball with me, but I think we can certainly anticipate a stable supply of gas. So, we can probably, if we look at that equation of what drives cost is, supply and demand, and demand is probably going to gradually increase, but the supply is expected to keep pace with that. So we don't expect a lot of volatility, in other words. So it seems like a pretty good, stable market to be able to do some, short and long-term forecasting, and to be able to enter into some sound, secure negotiations on the gas side. Electric, again, a lot of it depends on the regulatory environment. We're talking about a regulated commodity. So a lot of that time, a lot of those prices depend on the regulated side of things as much as the cost of the commodity itself. So, we think that one of the things that the committee should be looking at in terms of price, that is the number one factor, is what is the environment that you're working in, what is the supply, and what is the forecast. And I think, again, it's a good picture for the committee, for the city, but one that you should also feel like, you don't have to rush into. You should be able to kind of call the shots to make sure that you're in a position to get the best price, that you're able to secure savings for your consumers, for your citizens, and to the best of your ability, make sure that you're not going to be in a position that they will be harmed if the environment changes. What other concerns might this committee have in terms of dealing with consumers? One of them, I think, and again, kind of touching on some themes that Aaron talked about, is the process involves a certain amount of education. Folks are going to be receiving information. First of all, there's going to be public hearings. They're going to be receiving an opt-out letter. I don't know how many times I've gone out and talked to consumers, maybe on a different subject altogether, but if it's in an aggregation community, maybe after the presentation or whatever, I'll hear a comment. I never even got a letter from those guys at City Hall, and maybe even somebody else will echo that. I have little doubt that they probably did get that letter, but it's just the nature of that type of process that it's something that could very easily slip through the cracks. How many times do we get so much stuff in the mail that it's very difficult to keep track of all those things? So one of the things that I guess I would try to impress on the committee is just in that education piece, to try to take into account that this is the one opportunity for consumers to make that choice. It does come down to a choice to stay with, to be, and we're talking about casting that net, and one of the things that make it possible to secure a good price is the idea that you have this opt-out process. And inertia is a powerful force. A lot of people are going to be in the pool because they don't take the time to respond to a letter. But if they didn't respond to it because they didn't recognize it for what it was, and it did slip through the cracks, then that's unfortunate. And anything that the committee can do or the city can do, or the committee and its recommendations to highlight that piece of it in the education portion if it's on the outside of the envelope, to say, whatever the wording might be, to highlight that this is your, opt-out letter, again, just from experience, anecdotal as it might be, that's a concern that I've seen, our office has seen, that we would like to bring to your attention, to make sure that people aren't taking advantage of it, to exercise their right to opt out because it was just something that slipped through the cracks. So I think that's something important to bring to your attention. Some other issues, again, as far as the process, just in the switching back and forth, there's that initial period, I think it's 2-3 weeks after you have that letter, there's that window to opt in, to opt out. I was up in northern Ohio just last week, and I was talking to a county administrator. They were going to do an aggregation program for the unincorporated areas of the county, and county administrator was kind enough to give me some time when we were talking about aggregation. And they had done a program earlier, and they were renewing it, so they were going through the process again. And the first time they did it, they had if you had missed the opt-out, and so you were in that aggregation pool, and for one reason or another, you now decided that you wanted to get out of the pool, you had to pay a penalty. And it was not a lot, maybe it was $20, $25. That was their policy, and that's probably the most common model in aggregation communities, that there is a fee or a penalty to remove yourself after the initial opt-out period. But it's not prohibitive, but there is a fee. What they were doing this time, as they were renewing it, is waiving that fee. So there is a much more fluid freedom to move in and out of the aggregation pool. And so I was very interested in hearing you talk about that. So I don't know to the extent that it would impact your negotiating with the supplier, with the aggregator, because you would think that there might be a premium that you pay for that type, when they're negotiating price and speculating the cost to meet the city's demands. They have to forecast out, and if you got customers dropping in and dropping out, there's probably, a cost for that. But that's a consumer advocate. I thought, when I heard that, I thought, wow, that's a great thing. If customers have the ability to maybe drop out or come back into the aggregation group, that would certainly be something that would be consumer friendly. And as an advocate, we would certainly, like to see that be considered. I don't know if it would be cost prohibitive, but if it could be taken into consideration, it would be one thing that we would like the committee to at least look into. And to kind of put some, maybe a scenario or two behind that proposal, if you think about a situation where maybe the aggregation rate was set, and then the price of, let's say, since Columbia Gas is here, I don't know if somebody from AEP is here, I don't want to slight them, the rate for Columbia Gas drops below the aggregation rate. Now you've got a customer who is paying more for natural gas than if they had been with the city. So should we penalize? Should they be harmed when they could? They have to pay a penalty to get out of the aggregation group when they're actually paying more to stay. If you had waived the fee, or maybe you could even put in a clause that if those conditions are met, then you could waive the fee. Something of that nature would be something, again, to consider. Or if you have a customer who's with the marketer, and they thought, you know what, I'm not achieving the savings that I had thought. Maybe there's a $100 fee to terminate that contract. Well, they just took a hit to get out, but they want to join your aggregation pool, so do they have to pay another fee to join yours? So again, several different reasons, not just to be out of the goodness of your heart, but there actually are several scenarios where customers may be paying fees of one sort or another, or are harmed for one reason or another, that it might make sense for you to consider whether or not it's appropriate to have those fees. So I just wanted to bring that issue before the committee for their consideration. Another issue, again, and I listened to Mr. Shanahan's introduction, and he had quoted Mayor Coleman's "no surprises" mandate. With that in mind, I just wanted to make sure that the panel and the city, by extension, was aware of an issue that is kind of working its way forward, or pending, whatever is the right way to put it. OCC, the Ohio Consumers Council, and the PUCO and Columbia Gas, there may be other parties involved in the agreement, reached an agreement or settlement over a year ago that would put off until at least 2017 Columbia Gas pursuing their option to go to the PUCO and ask permission to no longer be the provider of last resort for residential gas customers. Right now, as we've heard, customers have the option to shop and choose for an alternative supplier. And they have that choice, and they can do that in one of two ways, as we also heard, by shopping as an individual or being part of an aggregation group. If they don't do that, their supplier of last resort is Columbia Gas. We are in a very changing, evolving utility environment. The whole idea of choice in its different forms. I think we're coming, it's been with us for, over a decade, going on 2 decades. And there's more changes to come. Well, one of those changes that's staring us in the face is whether or not at some point in the future, one of our choices will even be to buy our utility supplies, commodities, from the regulated utility company. We may only have the choice of going to an unregulated marketer or through some government affinity group like an aggregation program like we're discussing today. And so the agreement that I was just referring to, we went into that agreement with the idea that this is not something that we want to happen, but we went into the settlement in order to at least postpone it until 2017. And the other condition is that it won't happen in 2017 unless 2 conditions are met. One is that 70% of Columbia's customers have switched to another supplier, including an aggregation. And then they still have to go to the PUCO and get their permission. So I only bring this to the group's attention, the committee's attention, so that they are aware that in moving forward with their aggregation, Columbus is a big community. That right now, I don't know if I have an exact number, but I think Columbia Gas of Ohio's 1.3 or 1.5 million customers. I think about just under 45% of their customers have switched to date. And I don't know what number Columbus would bring to bring that number up. But I just don't think that you should do it without the knowledge of pushing that number closer to that 70%. It really shouldn't impact your decision one way or the other. I just don't think you should do it without the knowledge of that other issue being there. For one reason, a lot of your decision making may, as far as what price you decide on, what marketer you go with, other circumstances, may be based on looking at Columbia's standard choice offer, the rate that customers pay as a benchmark, as a baseline to compare other offers. If you go with an aggregation program and then 3 years from now you renegotiate it, that standard choice offer may not be there. So one of the very key pieces of information that you use to make your decision today may be gone when you revisit the same process. So again, just in the spirit of no surprises, I just wanted to bring that to your attention because it could be a fact, and it is something that is neither good or bad, but it is a reality, and it could be a factor in the future. So that is the other issue that I really wanted to bring to your attention. So in terms of, as a consumer advocate, what issues do we see? Price is number one. Certainty, guarantees, at least to the extent that we're not in a position of providing or creating harm, whether it's through a price that may actually be higher, or it's still at least maybe some safeguards that consumers can exit more freely without penalties. Consumer issues, the switching fees that I talked about, the education, whether it's on the outside of the envelope or if it's during the public hearings, whatever that process might be. Clearly understood correspondence and customer contact, and again, just to raise the awareness about that standard offered by the utility companies, that people understand what the baseline is, so that they're in a better position to understand and weigh the different offers. So those are the issues that I wanted to share with you, and if there's any questions, I can do my best to answer. Yes.
Does
I have several questions. One, is it possible for you to give a one-page sort of recommendations, concerns document that you could create for the committee?
You don't want my notes? I'm sorry, yes, of course.
And Ray, can you repeat the question? Sorry.
Oh, yes, okay. She just asked if it would be possible to prepare like a summary of my comments, and of course I will do that.
And you talked a little bit about, does the Ohio Consumers Council have a recommendation on duration of the aggregation because of price volatility? You know, the forecasts are not that reliable, the future forecasts, because of the volatility in the energy market. So I want to think about, you know, the duration of the aggregation, or somebody had mentioned that you had to renew the gas aggregation 2 years, electricity for 3 years, but the supply contract, the contract with the supplier can be longer than that, 5 years. But do you have any feel for what's a good length
You know, I
of time?
talked to
Is there
several
any research you do?
colleagues going into this meeting, and there certainly is no agency policy on that. You know, but I did try to talk to some of the folks on our gas and electric teams on this, and that I did not hear. The closest thing I heard, as far as any kind of a recommendation that involved any kind of a time frame, was, you know, the two industries really are different in nature. You know, obviously electricity, the electric industry, they're generating their own electricity. Natural gas it's you know, it's a different, you know, kind of set of infrastructure. The one thing I heard one gentleman say in the office was that some of the types of offers may vary just because of the nature of the industries, and when I mentioned the kind of the percentage off types of offers, and it used to be on the natural gas side that those types of offers from the marketers, and we're not talking about the utility companies, but the marketers themselves were something that communities that were looking to aggregate were finding more a few years ago. Not so much now, but those types of offers are still to be had, at least up until and this was something that his former job was to be like a consultant or an aggregator for municipalities. So this was somebody who was, you know, that was his gig, and he was saying that those types of offers, you know, to the best of his knowledge, were still out there on the electric side. So as far as, you know, that was more of a timing thing. But as far as the length of the contract, I didn't really see anything. And again, I think mostly you're probably not going to find, you know, I don't know that it would be to your advantage to do anything less than 2 years, but to go beyond that, I didn't hear any kind of a recommendation. But he did seem to think it was, you know, something that you would want to kind of move quickly on the electric side for that reason. Although there certainly are some time constraints. One thing, I'm not sure that I did hear this, and sir, correct me if I'm wrong, but one of the other kind of time frame issues is before this would go to a ballot, there is a referendum that the city, I mean, before you put anything on the ballot, the city council has to pass a referendum. And that has to happen, I think 75 days before it goes to a ballot. So when we're talking about natural gas, I think it kind of like almost precludes the winter of 14-15 as being a real possibility, just because of that kind of time frame. So you know, you just kind of work the clock backwards. So just as far as timing issues and things like that, I just wanted, since we were on that subject, I wanted to kind of put that out there. But any other kind of recommendations, I would not have for you.
I think that's a great question to raise with the panel we'll have at our next meeting with different cities that have done this, is how they discussed what the term should be and how they pick the number.
And opt-out, duration, savings, all of that, yeah.
Ray, I'm a little bit confused about the settlement with Columbia, and I appreciate the no surprises warning there. In 2017, under this agreement, Columbia Gas can request the PUCO to no longer serve as the provider of last resort. Does the 70% have the opportunity to trigger that early, or do they have to meet the 70% shopping in order to even request?
If I understood your question, they have to attain 70% switching at any point in time, but prior to 2017. So at 2017, if they can't do it before 2017, but at 2017. So at 2017, if they haven't changed, those two things have to happen. So at 2017, if they haven't achieved 70% switching, then they would not have the ability to go before the PUCO and ask for that. But if they have 70% and it's 2017, and then it's still up to the PUCO to grant that. The company has to request it. It just gives them paves the way for them to go to the PUCO and do it. So a lot of conditions still have to be met even after that. The company's, desire to do that, the PUCO granting them permission, but those two preconditions are that number and that date. Yes.
And so, bear with me, but if that were to happen, Columbia Gas would no longer be the utility gas service provider of last resort.
That is correct.
Then what?
Well, again, they would be a regulated utility company. They would be more, I hope I'm not oversimplifying it, but aligned in, a pipeline company. They would not be providing, they would not be a gas provider. So customers would not have the ability to purchase gas from their utility company. They would only have the ability to shop individually from the marketers, which they can do now, but they would not have that fallback, choice of staying with the company. Or they could, if they, here in Columbus, we're still deciding, they may be able to go with the city as an aggregator. So some communities, they may have just the choice of shopping as an individual. In other communities, they may have the local community aggregation plan. But they would not be able to just stay pat and stay with the regulated utility rate, which, again, without getting too much in the weeds, is not a regulated rate per se. It is a rate that is based on a retail auction, the key component of which is the New York Mercantile Exchange rate, and an adder that is, determined at a retail auction. So that rate itself that Columbia makes available to its consumers is very much a market rate. Others may argue the fine points, but it's not a regulated rate in the strictest sense. Anything else?
Great, thank you very much.
Yeah, my pleasure. Appreciate the opportunity.
Okay, and third, we're going to hear from the City of Columbus Department of Public Utilities, Greg Davies and Herb Johansson, and I'm not sure how they've divided up responsibilities, or if they're going to go up together, or what about
Sure. Chairman Shanahan, members of the committee, thank you for this opportunity. My name is Greg Davies. I'm the Director of Public Utilities for the City of Columbus, which includes water, sewer, and of course town, which we're here talking about tonight. And with me is Herb Johansson, and he is the administrator of town. I think I'm in the room. It's safe to say that this thunder is making you a little nervous, so let's cross our fingers and hope it passes without doing any damage to our infrastructure. Just wanted to give you a little bit of background about what we do. Obviously, we have a very small utility compared to AEP and others, and could be somewhat confusing for the committee and for potential voters to understand how this all interacts with us. So, just a little background on the division. It's about 100 years old. We currently have a little under 13,000 customers. And our purpose when we started, our purpose now is to provide funding to light the streets in the city of Columbus. So we do not generate power, we buy power on the market, and we then turn around and use the proceeds from selling that power to light the streets. And what that allows the city to do is to save roughly about $15 million a year from the general fund. We are not funded by the city, we are funded by the sale of power. We are an enterprise fund, so by doing that and using that model, we've been able to save for hundreds of years a lot of money for the residents of Columbus, who I think we can all agree streetlights would be a priority and the money would need to come from somewhere. So that is the purpose of our division, and that is what we are in business to do. It's important to note that municipal utilities, such as the city of Columbus, we are not part of aggregation. So if the city does move forward to aggregate its pool, our customers will be exempt from that. So we will not be part of that. And it's important also to know that our customers currently have the ability to switch. So the notion that we would be somehow impacted negatively by someone coming in and having that large pool is certainly a potential, but we're pretty confident that currently residents do have, our customers do have that opportunity to not switch. I think because we are a smaller utility, our customer service and reliability and our ability to do repairs after a large storm, hopefully not like tonight, it allows people to stay with us, and they're willing to sometimes pay additional dollars to do so. Additionally, the majority of our largest customers, our biggest revenue generators, I should say, are industrial and commercial, and they too are not part of the aggregation pool. It's no secret the division in the last few years has had some issues financially. As we pointed out at the beginning, we do not generate power, so therefore we are obligated to go out and buy it on the open market. But because power prices have been very good, recently we have locked in power through the middle of 2019, and our last contract, we actually were able to secure a portion of that as green power as well. So we're very excited about the future of the division. We feel that we've stabilized it, and we will continue to upgrade our infrastructure and light streets and do the things that people expect from the utility. That's really all that I have to add. I have heard here if you have any specific questions about what we do or our utility, I'd be happy to share it. I think we just wanted to explain how we interact with this whole process, and the division of power would not be running this aggregation campaign. We would certainly help in any way we can. This is more of a citywide initiative, but it certainly will raise the question to our customers and others, how does this impact your division? So we just wanted to share that with you. And you have a great panel member, Cheryl Roberto, my former boss, my predecessor, and if you have any questions, she's much smarter than me, so I'm sure she will be able to answer those as well. So with that, Kurt and I are happy to answer any questions you might have. I thought I did so well.
Could you say a little bit more about the makeup of those 13,000 customers in terms of residential, businesses, industrial?
There are about 9,000 residential. The rest are broken up into industrial and commercial. About 400 industrial clients, rest are commercial.
It's important to note that the large customers, the largest customers are us, the division of water, the division of sewers and drains. So we have some stability there in terms of our largest generators.
We also provide service for Columbus State, several state office complexes in town, city buildings, but we have some pretty good sized industrial clients too. As Greg said, the majority of our revenues do come from our commercial and industrial clients. Those are the people who, we want the residentials, but certainly we get the most bang for our buck, the most value for our dollar with the larger clients. From a service level, we think our customers are pretty doggone loyal to us because of our reliability, because we are competitive, and we are competitive. Our challenges have been recently the third-party providers, and we've had several meetings with our larger clients. They say we can save money, and as we go through it and unpack it for them, we haven't lost it yet. Many times at the end of the day, when you factor in not only the demand charges, the energy charges, all of the riders, and you compare it to our cost structure, they find out that in fact we're lower. And then on top of that is our service. We're a pretty stable and secure utility. We're proud of that.
What are your reliability standards and response time? This is just a curiosity question because this is what we do at the university. We have a 99.99% reliability with electricity, given that we have a hospital. We're in charge of our own distribution inside, and we guarantee that we'll have the power restored within, a certain period of time. I'm just curious whether, I'm asking because I don't know if it would be a component of the aggregation here, Mark, in terms of from a customer perspective, the reliability of power and so forth. So.
Okay. The reliability of power?
Yeah. Do you guarantee 99% of the time that?
Well, we can't guarantee it.
Yeah.
We get our power from either AEP or it comes in on their transmission systems. We have our distribution system. We have our substations. We have a lot of redundancy in that system. Our materials are higher quality. Our distribution system, or our dispatch center is very sophisticated. And so our reliability is one of our biggest selling points. Tonight, there's going to be people that are going to be without electricity. I can guarantee you our people will be back in service before the others.
I sure don't like the word guarantee, but
So there are really two parts to the reliability piece. One is the distribution system,
That's what I was
which
asking.
you absolutely control. And the other is the generation supply, which you do not control. And I assume that you just build into your contracts conditions for your supplier to make sure you're getting.
Sure, we provide them our load information, and they respond back to us.
Yeah, for clarifying that. I was asking about the distribution reliability standards that you control.
yeah, typically any issues we're going to have are going to be with our distribution system. We're going to get the power, we're going to have an issue with that. And what Herb and I are trying to point out is when we do lose power, we can get it restored pretty quickly. A big part of that obviously is just the size of what we have to deal with compared to others. It's easier to fix a small system than it is an entire city, but we do take that very seriously. We have an excellent track record of getting people back.
One thing on costs of power, in the next few years, as the industry decommissions coal, and we're losing 8,000, 9,000 megawatts of coal in Ohio. The models are done, the engineers are done. From what I understand is, they understand how contingency plans are going to work, but they've never done it before. In January, I've been told that 80% of those plants that are going to be subject to retirement were running. Now, I say that in terms of aggregation, because we received in February a $250,000 adder to our bill, which helped pay for those peaking plants. And month to month, we don't know what additional costs are going to come in from PJM, the big guys who are controlling the whole thing. And there's some variability in our our billing. Our energy cost is essentially fixed. We know what we're going to buy our energy from. We know what our demand charges are. But on top of that, there's some variable costs. And that's where, if there is variability, obviously you're going to have a variability cost, and nobody can predict that at this point. So I guess I'm just adding that.
Has there been any thought given to expanding the municipal system?
At this point, we were just trying to stabilize it and to make sure that our infrastructure, which we didn't have dollars for a while, that we're getting the upgrades that we need to put in streetlights. And most of the additional dollars that we have, the city council, the mayor, and us, we agree that we should be putting that in the neighborhoods and lining the streets. So the amount of dollars that we would need to actually expand the system, which is not there yet. Long term, I think that is certainly a goal that we're going to talk about. We do have and there's a map over there if you want to see it afterwards of our distribution area. It's basically the 1950s It's fairly small. But we would like to fill in some of the areas where we do have the ability to serve before we would actually expand it. There's no real talks of expanding it. I think as long as we can continue to light the streets, that's the model we want to use.
Thank you, gentlemen, very much.
Thank you very much.
We have some time if there are questions that committee members want to put before the panel to think about. I know this was a real 101 dump of information, and so we're trying to figure out exactly what it is we're wrestling with. It may not be that productive to do it now, but I think if there are maybe questions that were raised in your minds tonight that you want to at least put on the board to be discussed in the future, this would be a good time to do that.
I have several sort of thoughts on, things to consider in the aggregation agreement. I don't know if I'm jumping the gun. Data in terms of the cost savings, how many opted, the pros and cons of the opt-in and opt-out, meaning who's the opt-out, the best source of energy forecast pricing, both, duration of the agreement, some of the deals like indexing to market price, percentage of market price type of, experience with education, and again, should we build in reliability type of agreement into the agreement, reliability standards into the agreement. And then I also have a little bit of a process question since we met for the first time today, because we have all this data dump that we have today. How do we react to it? How do we process it? Because every meeting has been sort of set up sort of informational in nature. So is the idea that after the information sessions we get together and do this sort of thinking, or do we meet? I know it's a big time commitment to sort of have more of an in-depth discussion after these information sessions to see, and especially if you get more data and answers to our research questions, how do we react to it as a committee and that sort of thing. Mark, so I don't know what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And the other piece that we need to balance with that is that there's a commitment to this being a public and open process.
Right, so,
And so I think we have in the schedule, we've sort of put in a slot for a tentative meeting. It might be that if we have a brief discussion at the end of each session where we can identify issues, that perhaps then we schedule one full meeting where it would be just that kind of a discussion to try to figure out how to wrestle with all the data that we're going to have. But I also think it's absolutely essential to keep the questions in line, and then with the different groups we'll have before us, to ask them specifically about their experiences with those questions. Right? Because if we've got 3 or more cities that have done the aggregation, those are the things they had to wrestle through to get there. probably learn a lot from that, and then maybe refine the questions after hearing how other people dealt with it. I think the schedule allows us to have a session where we can just sit down and put ideas on the table and discuss them before we try to formulate a recommendation.
Yes, absolutely. We can add, you know, a day. We can add.
Sure. And I think obviously the one thing that we want to be sensitive to is everybody's schedules. Right? This is all volunteer work. Everybody has jobs in the real world, so we want to make sure we're not asking too much of participants. Is there anything else people want to put out on the table in terms of what we should think about?
No, I'm just very interested to hear from other municipalities, what their experience has been, cost savings, how they've educated their citizens, especially older adults, you know, who sometimes need some help in figuring out some of these things, and so just very interested in that.
Sure. You know, one of the things that occurred to me listening to the presentations tonight, I think Aaron mentioned it. Obviously, the first thing everybody talks about is the price of the electricity. What are we going to pay? And that obviously is always going to be objective number one. But are there other things that this kind of an aggregation program could do, whether it's a look at renewable energy, perhaps it's some kind of cooperation with energy efficiency programs? Can we develop a way that there's an energy package that we're suggesting to the city that brings the cost down, not just the price of the electricity, but the total cost to Columbus residents? And that's a lot tougher to deal with, obviously, because the cost of generation will be priority number one.
Yes. And I wonder if it's too late, or is there opportunity to poll the public in some ways to see what they would like to see in something like that from a consumer perspective? Do they want to have, you know, like somebody had mentioned, maybe Aaron, that some communities had a focus on renewables, somebody wanted a fixed price. How did they determine that? You know, did they seek public input to reach those decisions? And how do we go about doing that? I don't know, but is there room to do that before we finalize the recommendations? To sort of solicit some public input into the...
I may have missed this, but how long has aggregation been an option for Ohio municipalities? And which municipalities have been doing it longer, and what were their contract terms?
I'm not sure when it's
I think the PCO.
it started.
How long has aggregation
Been a possibility.
Since the late 1990s.
Yeah,
So it was
1999.
when they did the deregulation bill in Senate Bill 3. Okay. So since early 2000s.
So we're likely to hear from a couple different municipalities that have had it for some time and have dealt, hopefully, with some of these questions and have experience in these questions. Good.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Mr. Chair, we are capturing the comments from the committee and the questions that we are hearing you all talk about so that we can have the cities, the municipalities to be prepared to answer those questions.
That's great. That's excellent. That's excellent. Is there anything else from the committee folks?
Devil's in the details.
I know. Clearly. Absolutely. I guess the other important reminder is that the process that we're going through leads to another review process. So we make recommendations, but then city council has to take it under advisement, and they have to take action. Even if we were recommending go forward, they then have to consider that. They could well have hearings, they'll have to put something on the ballot, that means they have to pass a resolution. So there are still a number of places that the public can get involved in the process as we move forward. Not to mention that ballot issue if we were going toward aggregation where everybody gets to vote on it. Well, if folks don't have other questions to raise tonight, I would just want to thank everybody for being here, for the folks in the audience, and folks who are watching. Remind everybody that the TV will publish a schedule for rebroadcasts All this material will be available on the website, columbus.gov, Columbus Energy Review. Our next meeting is this Friday, the 16th at 10 a.m., 10 a.m. to noon at the Dodge Recreation Center. And there we will hear from other cities who have gone through the aggregation process. And that, I think, will help us to really move forward. And hope you all can join us, and thank you all for being here tonight.
Thank you.
If you have questions that you filled out too, I can take